It has been quite some time since I had done a video, and I believe the last video I had done was about, you know, the golden rule and, treating others as we would want to be treated. And it's definitely something that a lot of people don't contemplate when they're making the decision. But I think, when, you start realizing how your decisions can affect another person. And then you start becoming more mindful of that fact that you don't want to make any decisions, if it's going to cause repercussions for another, and just, I mean, for example, you may be driving and you don't signal. Well, it's not helpful for the person behind you because, I mean, you're signaling to go right and you have no signal on, then, that's just it's just a major like inconvenience. So when you realize that's an inconvenience for the person behind you, you know you start realizing, well, you wouldn't want that done to you. You'd want to know, someone's intentions that are in front of you. It's not really a good example, but of course this video is off topic. I'm basically, I want to speak about more or less integrity and the integrity we need to have as Christians and lights in this world. Jesus said, you don't light a lamp and put it under a basket because that defeats the whole purpose of the light shining. We want our light to shine in this world, in this dark world. And the only way we're going to do that is being able to walk in God's truth to show other people, God's ways. We want them to know God's love. We want them to know God's ways. And so every moment, I believe, is a chance for us to walk in God's ways and to walk in God's truth so people can come to know Jesus. That's, I believe that's something very important, you know, with us as Christians. You know, I mean, how much lights are we being if we don't have integrity? We want to have integrity. If you can, let's say, for example, I recall years ago, um, when I had my first car, I was given the opportunity by the guy that was, get writing out the titles. He was going to do it in an underhanded kind of way, in which I would have paid little to no money at all for it. But I realized at that moment that here I'm living for God. How would, if I went through with what this guy had said as a Christian, what would he say then about Jesus? You know, you know, like I had said, at that moment, God gave me the chance of walking integrity and walking in his truth. And, that test I had passed. I mean, anybody in this world, you know, if they could get away with going the cheaper route, knowing that it's wrong, would they do it? What would we do at that moment? You know, I want to try to think of like some other examples. Okay, here is another example. I was with my son yesterday, and we were talking about having integrity. And, my boy is like 9 years old. And so I gave him an example about what if, let's say, you're going to Dunkin' Donuts or, whatever donut establishment you have, and they give you a bag of donuts. You paid for 2 donuts, yet you look in the bag and there's a third one. At that moment, what would you do? I asked him. And so I told him that if you see a third one in there, you need to let them know that, because maybe it's by accident. Because why would you want to drive away, when you only pay 2 donuts and you didn't pay for the third one? So I told him at that moment that, if you have a third one in there, you need to go back there and tell them that, there is a third one in there that I would like to pay for. So, you know, it could have been, a gesture by the donut place. Hey, they give you a third one because they like you or whatever. That's great. But allow God to, praise you at that moment and grant you a third one, rather than just driving away, you know, not having them verify that. So, I recall, many other times where, there was one time I went in with my son and they gave him a donut for free. And, because he was cute to them. So, I showed him at that moment that, you know, we need to have integrity. We need to walk, the way that we should, because here we're accountable not only to God, but to the world. How are we going to look to the world if we're getting away for something with, not paying for it? We're not being lights to them. What does it say to the world? Well, Christians, they break the laws like everyone else. We don't want that testimony. We want somebody to come to God, you know? So if you have a chance of getting something cheaper, knowing that it's against God, would you do it? Or would you have integrity at that moment, knowing that God is bringing that circumstance up to you to test you? What would you do at that moment? You know, it's how many Christians are really relaxed with God's laws and God's ways of doing things. They let the world come in and, they dismiss God's truth. You know, how many Christians, fornicate, which they shouldn't be doing, because then you're not being a light to the person that you're with, doing that with. I had told many people, as I was growing in my walk with God, that, if you're following God, you can't do that kind of stuff, because that's what the world does. The world follows that way. The world has that thinking, try before you buy. But Christians are supposed to live totally different. We're not being lights in this world if we're doing exactly what the world does. So, I just wanted to share that with you. I pray that, this message has challenged you, that, you know, I want you to think that every chance that you're living is a chance to do good, is a chance to be a light in this dark world. So, thank you for taking the time to watch.